We will attempt to keep this. That's alright. What just happens? Okay, this might be a bad demonstration of this game. Let's back up a bit. Cards and Castles 2 just launched in early access this past weekend, and I recently streamed a couple of hours of it over on Twitch. So I wanted to talk about this game and my first experiences with it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Moonfasa, and I mainly make content in a game of a similar genre, Faeria. If you are a member of the Faeria community, this game is its next door neighbor. It combines the genres of a summoner-style CCG with the chessboard and several other similar mechanics to Faeria. There are no hexagons, I know, it's atrocious game design, but we'll have to make do. I actually had a lot of fun with this game in my first 2 hours of playtime. The tutorial starts off with a fun little story where you lead an army of buff Norsemen to fight the White Walkers. Sorry, wrong script. Yeah, here we go. Where you lead an army of buff Norsemen to fight the zombies who walk upon white snow. We use the Hearthstone mana system in Cards and Castles 2, meaning we gain one maximum gold budget in this case every turn, which refreshes to full every turn. Combat works identical to Faeria, and there is even a side objective on the board, much like Faeria Wells, but in this case it is a singular structure that when destroyed from your opponent's side, gives you a drawn copy of a random card from your opponent's deck. Since there aren't any additional requirements to playing a card apart from paying its gold cost, there are a few cards I came across that let you summon things from your opponent's deck. And while there is only one objective on the board, I really didn't mind this, because the rest of the board feels very impactful and tactical, only allowing you to summon creatures within 2 range of your castle. This game, in fact, is a lot more similar to Duelist 2, if you ever saw me playing that on the channel a little while back. I actually had a lot of gripes with how Duelist 2 was designed, so what makes this game so different? My biggest complaint with Duelist 2 was how little the board and its objectives seemed to matter, and to give as much credit as possible, when I played it, it was in a very early stage of development to my knowledge, so these complaints may change in the future. But the mana wells when I played felt like you often rushed there first thing to stop your opponent from grabbing them, which you may not even get use out of because your mana refreshes every turn, and even if you did get use out of the extra 1 mana, that was it. The wells didn't replenish, so it was a one-time use. Basically, it felt like the Explore card from Faeria or the coin from Hearthstone, not really an onboard objective, but just a way to give a small bonus to one of the players for balancing reasons. Cards and Castles 2, of course, also has a one-time use objective with its Supply Depot. It's just one extra card you get to draw once in the match. I think onboard side objectives are really important for a cardboard game, as I'm now going to name this genre. If there aren't side objectives, it incentivizes the players to just throw all their units at each other's faces, and then you end up with a messy cluster of bodies all clumped together like I saw in nearly every game in Duelist 2. The Supply Depot structure in CNC looks like such a simple and almost irrelevant piece, but because of its more defensive placement on the board, I found that in my games there was often a debate to whether I wanted to send units up to collect that extra objective, or send them up the opposite path to sneak in some face hits. The tutorial took about 20 minutes, though I did stop to read all the text and talk with Twitch chat. And then, after scoffing at the Vikings for not having seen The Last of Us yet, seriously, it's been like 3 months, get with the times, I decided to build my own deck. I love Norse theming, so this is what I decided to play with mainly, but there are 7 factions in total to choose from, and you can include up to 2 of these in your decks. There is a single-player campaign you can try out, but like any card game, I'm personally more drawn towards the competitive PvP scene, so our first multiplayer match was against Faeria's own Summer Flame, who actually was the one to put Cards and Castles on my radar in the first place, but I never ended up getting around to playing that first one. In this match, I had a pretty fantastic early game, overwhelming my opponent with tempo creatures and slapping his life total down to 8. But soon after we hit the 10 gold mark, I had nothing left to play but cheap 2 costs, and Summer Flame got all of his big expensive creatures. So I had no hope of fighting him back and ended up losing the overall match. Back to the drawing board. I'm not too familiar with the Hearthstone mana system, so gauging the proper mana curve across my deck is quite a bit different from how Faeria deck building works, So this will take me a bit of time to perfect, but I think I made an alright starter deck at the end of it all. Our next opponent happened to be a seasoned veteran who played in this game's earlier beta that released back in 2021. And I didn't even realize this at first until the card John Vive the Dawn Sword was played, resurrecting an unspecified large number of creatures on the board. What just happened? Which was absolutely crazy, and while this was a very exciting moment of the match, I do hope that cards like this are pretty limited in the game, because wow, this was a lot to look at. This mainly came from not knowing what all the cards do, but I did not have any turn time bank to think about how to solve this board state. And I imagine this is still a lot to think about even for players who do know the card pool. One other thing that made me really dislike Duelist 2 was the direction of card balance. And yes, this video has turned into commentary about Duelist 2 as well, but they took a direction where if every card is overpowered, no card is overpowered. And this is absolutely fine for a certain personality of player, but is just not something that I myself enjoy in a card game. This can make games super swingy when you draw that really overpowered cards, wipe the board, and now your opponent has to draw the perfectly overpowered counter to your card, or they just lose on the spot. I'm not saying Cards and Castles is like this, I just wanted to comment on this type of game design while we're on the subject. I don't know the bulk of CNC's card pool, also since I mainly played with other players who also had beginner card collections, but it is my hope that as I play this more, because I definitely will do, that the card balance is more similar to what I know and love from Faeria. I will make one distinction here also on quote-unquote overpowered cards, because Faeria has cards like these as well. Soul Eater, for example, has no limit on the stats it gains when friendly creatures die throughout the match, so it can become a massive, uncontestable body sometimes. But this type of design I am actually okay with, because it is built to be a late game win condition, and it helps end the game in a timely fashion rather than dragging it out for turns and turns on end. It is a very counterable card simply by playing a faster game plan than your opponent before the stats can build up this high, because it is a very slow archetype. As a new player in Faeria though, this will feel incredibly broken, because matches at a beginner level of play just naturally are longer than an average competitive setting, which will make cards like Soul Eater feel stronger. So it is my hope that cards like John Vive and whatever similar cards may exist in the game follow this same design principle as well. Super late game pieces that are meant to give the owner a convincing board state should the match drag on too long. But obviously I don't have enough experience to judge this right now. The last thing I wanted to touch on about this game is trap cards, which came up in my last match of the stream. This is something unique to Faeria, though it is used in other card games. It seems to function pretty well the same as other games do as well. When your opponent plays a trap, you get notified about its existence, but you don't know how it is triggered, because these can be triggered by attacking a unit or when a unit is killed, or other triggers I assume as well. I think this also could create a unique mechanic with this type of genre where traps could be placed on certain spaces on the board and triggered upon step. Though I didn't see any cards like this when I played, so I'm fairly certain they probably don't exist. Could be wrong, but that would create another fun little thing to play around that may also have an impact on your tactical placement of your units and trap cards on the board. I imagine the devs probably did test something like this and decided against it though. It does seem like an obvious route to go down in a game with both trap cards and a board, so maybe it's only a cool idea in theory. This last match here also was really what sold me on the game. At this point in the stream, I started to understand a lot of the strategies and had built a slightly more concise deck list, and I was surprised how interesting it was to position units in different places on the board, retreat units when I was faced with an unfavorable stat line, and body block to protect my weaker units in the back. This was also almost a reverse of the first match I had with Summerflame, where he got me down to a low life total before I pushed him back and ultimately won with a big boy Minotaur. And I didn't actually end up taking the supply depot objective this game, but that honestly didn't feel like such a bad thing. I definitely had opportunities to take it, but I decided it was more worth my actions in the moment to take favorable trades and close out a lethal for myself before Summer found a lethal on me. Overall, I've never been a big fan of the Hearthstone sort of mana system, and I can't imagine this game is going to sway my opinion of that either, but the rest of its mechanics feel very snappy and tactical enough to keep my interest for now. I'll definitely play some more of this game and maybe make a video later down the line on my more detailed thoughts. In fact, I'm probably streaming right now. I plan to do so at 1 PM PST on Twitch after the release of this video, and the devs were actually kind enough to give me some card pack keys to give away on stream if anyone wants to try out this game and get some free goodies. It is free to play right now on Steam, though keep in mind that it is in early access, so some things might end up changing later down the line. And if you're not a big fan of Twitch, you can also check out my first stream on the end cards here. I've posted it on my VODs channel, so head over there and subscribe if you want to see my future streams of this game. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.